Everyone. Going to go ahead and get started. I see there were some issues with audio. I put a note in the chat. If you're having problems with audio, you probably can't hear me, but if you have any coworkers who are saying that they're having issues, please encourage them to make sure that they're joining the audio in the bottom left-hand part of the screen. Not sure, uh, not sure why Zoom isn't having you join automatically, but sometimes it does that. So if you're still having issues, please contact tchelp@csh.org, and my coworker is standing by to help with any technical issues. So I'll put that in the chat as well. My name is Emma Chappell, and I am joining from Cleveland, Ohio. I am here at the training center. I work at the training center at CSH, and we put on webinars like this all the time. So feel free to visit our website to see more of the offerings that we have. But I want to hand it over to our special guests, Nicholas and Maria, to let them introduce themselves and let us know a little bit about what their organization does.
Great. Well, thanks, Emma. We really appreciate the opportunity to present today. So I'm Nick, Nicholas, sometimes when I'm in trouble, but Nick Works, CEO here of Interpro, joined by Maria. So Maria, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. I am Maria Fagruelias. I am a project manager with Interpro, and I've been doing translation project management for 20 years, and Interpro has been in the business for 30.
For 30 years, yes. So we're super excited to be here. And we called our session Translation 101. So basically, we're going to kind of go over the basics of what goes into translation and options that are out there, how we feel it should be done correctly. But we do want the session to be interactive. I know it's a little tricky with so many participants, but we'll have time for Q&A at the end. But if you have any questions throughout, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. Emma, you can relay them to us, because we do want this to be helpful, and hopefully you'll have some good takeaways that are relevant to your day-to-day. So with that, I will begin. Kind of start with just a quick overview of who Interpro is. You can essentially think of us as like your language people. Anything that needs to go from one language to another, usually English to a foreign language, is where we come in. We have 2 ISO quality certifications. One is for company-wide quality management. The other one is for translation quality. So we're actually not a tech company. We're not an app. We do work with some technology, but the majority of what we do is with human translators, paired by subject matter, with multiple levels of QA and review. We're based in Wheaton. We're at our headquarters office right now. Just again, very much a partnership-oriented company that we want to help our clients in any way that we possibly can and point them in the right direction. So some of the things that we translate are like documentation, from like a one-pager to a user manual to a training. We do a lot of e-learning, computer-based training. So with videos or voiceover recording to kind of help guide those that need to learn another language. Self-paced learning. We do interpreting, so that would be like real-time translation, and for like a meeting like this, a webinar like this, or an annual meeting, or a person-to-person kind of interpreting. A lot of times it's interesting. People say, hey, I'm looking for a translator for a medical appointment, or I'm looking for a translator for a court case. It's actually an interpreter. So they're very similar industries, but the terminology is different. It's a different skill set. Those that are really good at translating, words aren't necessarily an interpreter. Interpreters aren't necessarily a translator, but they are linguists. DTP stands for multilingual desktop publishing, and that is actually formatting translated materials. So like Spanish expands, German expands, and there's kind of layout work that is needed. Arabic is right to left, like some other languages. Chinese can shrink. So actually not just doing translation, but formatting content is really important. Website content, and then software applications. So again, your language people, anything that needs to go from one language to another, and doing it accurately is kind of where we come in from the professional translation side of things. So one of the reasons we connected and we got this great opportunity to meet with all of you is that we actually work with CSH directly. So we met, I believe, like towards the end of 2022, and we've actually localized a variety of different types of materials. You can see some screenshots here. Introduction to supportive housing programs, providing care with a harm reduction approach, trauma-informed approaches to providing care, understanding your lease. So we were actually able to translate a lot of documents and e-learning, computer-based training with voiceover and video into Armenian, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, and Polish. So while we work with kind of organizations of all types, any type of mission-based group or nonprofit or association, when we're making like a difference in what we're translating, it's really like the most rewarding type of work for us because we know that we were able to touch a large amount of people that otherwise would not have had access to this training in their language. Even if someone speaks English or has limited English proficiency, translating it in their native language and doing it accurately can really go a long way. So we look forward to continuing to work with CSH and making a difference when those opportunities arise for us to translate. And long story short, Interpro, like our philosophy is basically to just be a good partner to our clients, work with them, flexible, make it scalable, small projects, big projects, different complexity of files, quality, and it's not a one size fits all. We're able to kind of work how our clients need us to work. So at the end of the day, we really do care. Like I mentioned on the previous slide, it's rewarding to have this kind of work done and to know that we're able to bridge some language gaps and play a small piece in like a really big puzzle. And we have a great team here of project managers like Maria, engineers, and everyone has to fit kind of that philosophy as part of our credo. So that's enough about us. And I think at this point, I will hand it over to Maria to talk a little bit more about some of the nitty-gritty that goes into the process.
Yes, and let's get started into the content. And we wanted to know, what has been your experience if you ever have worked with a translator, an interpreter, a company that provides, these services. If there is a quick poll, if you could answer the question so we know more or less what is your experience for this session, that would be great.
Thanks, Maria. People are answering, so I'm just gonna give a couple more seconds. Appreciate all of your enthusiasm. We're getting really good response.
Awesome. We just need the elevator music.
Yeah, totally. All right, I'm gonna share the results. Looks like most people have used translation or interpreter services. So 73% have, 25% haven't.
Great number. I love it.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think, hopefully we're able to validate some of the experiences and information that you already know. It would be interesting in the chat just to find out, like, how did those experiences go? Were they positive? Were there challenges? But, feel free if you'd like to put some of that in there. We could take a look.
Yeah, Graciela is saying, and I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly, but that they used to be a medical interpreter. So that's pretty cool. We have someone who's done some of the job themselves. Great.
That is great. I actually, my personal experience, that is how I entered the business. I was an interpreter for the hospitals around the Chicago area. So that is how I dive into the business a little bit. And then, I started with the translation. And here is the concepts about translation is focused in the written content, like documentation. Translators actually, they have some time to research the content, and they have to have some skill set, like they have to have a strong grammar, written skills. Interpreting, from the other hand, is focused in real-time verbal communication. It's all oral, like a meeting or a webinar like we are doing right now, and they have to be quick in their feet. Their memory has to be very, very good, And they usually are trained for note taking, so they can take notes quickly, and memory techniques. And then another concept is localization. And it's like going beyond translation, going beyond the written content, and adapting that content into a cultural context of the target audience. We're gonna go to the next slide. I'm gonna dive into localization with Nick.
Yeah, so I mean, according to GALA, which is the Globalization and Localization Association, the definition is the process of adapting a product or content to a specific locale or market. At the end of the day, a really good localized product or document, whatever it might be, and deliverable is if someone who speaks that language would not know that it was translated from English. So that is always our ultimate goal. And as Maria said, localization is really like taking translation almost as like the next level and going a little bit further. One like pretty easy example is call 911. Obviously, everybody knows what that is here in the States. But if you translated that into Italian, that isn't like the number in Italy. So, you know, a translation of that by itself doesn't really help or get the point across. It would be localized as chiama il 112 in Italian. So there's a lot of different nuances like this that could be easily missed if you don't have a professional linguist or you're using some kind of AI or machine translation. So yeah, and we'll get into a couple other examples here. But at the end of the day, good localization is someone who speaks that language doesn't know it was translated from English.
Yeah, I remember one of my experiences when doing a translation with a client. Probably you remember, they have a poster that it was gonna be translated from English into Chinese and Spanish for Argentina, and they have a globe of the world in the middle of the poster. So for the English version for the United States and for the Argentinian version, the globe was actually the Americas. So you could see that it was located in your area of the world. And for China, it was actually in the other side. So they could relate to that poster. So little things like images and little details like that makes that translation go to that other level of resonance.
Makes it more impactful for sure. So we have another poll.
Another quick poll. What do you think is the most important factor when translating information in supportive housing, or why? And the same will be with interpreting, translation or interpreting. Accuracy, cultural sensitivity, clarity, or speed.
And again, we're getting very good responses, so just give it a minute. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share out the poll, and we have a mix of answers. I think.
And I am not surprised because they are all important.
Yes.
Right? Accuracy is important, clarity is important, speed is also important in some materials when you need to, translate or interpret really fast because it's needed, it's urgent. But we think that cultural sensitivity is the most important thing. So because it directly affects how information is received and understood by the people from different backgrounds. What types of materials or do you do for translation? So for documents, we can do forms, contracts, information packets for non-English speaking clients, conversations for interpreting services, for meetings of counseling. And again, cultural sensitivity is understanding those cultural nuances and their impact on communication. For example, you go to see a client, which is a family, and they're from another country, and they respect authority figures. So you are talking to them, and you notice that they are not looking at you, or maybe they don't speak, or they are soft, speaking softly. And that is all because their cultural belief is about authority and respect. And that is how you, understanding that cultural aspect of that family, you can adapt how you talk and how you communicate with them, speaking gently and allowing pauses. So, they trust you, and you can communicate with that family. Again, using language access in your work. Here are some examples in supporting housing translation informational brochure, translating policy documents for clients, legal documents for clients, using language interpreters in client meetings, taking a training in their native languages, orientations, webinars. I'm sure you see the use of translating or interpreting in different aspects of your daily work. Another quick poll, what types of materials or situations do you encounter that require translation or interpreting? And how can cultural understanding improve that service delivery in your daily work? I don't know if anybody wants to share.
That might be more of a chat.
Yeah.
Chats.
Yeah, maybe if you want to write some examples.
Yeah, people can just put their responses in the chat. That would be great. And I know Shauna says that in the past they've had great experiences using interpreters. And Graciela was just talking about how much they enjoyed working at multiple medical offices as an employee and working with localization, and that it was a very rewarding job when she had it. So
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So meantime, for everyone on the webinar, please share in the chat what types of materials or situations do you encounter that require translation or interpreting? How can cultural understanding improve your service delivery? And I see some answers are coming through. So needing to get information from a client who does not speak English, ROIs, intakers, assessments or insurance, booking transportation. Yeah, a couple people said booking transportation came up.
Oh, it's very broad. Yeah.
And someone says, working on a project now. Laura says, working on a project now that requires both in-person documents and emails in email translation. And then say, with cultural sensitivity, what is a respectful way to address men, women, elders, etc. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance, given different languages in terms of things like that.
It'd be interesting to know what languages.
Yeah.
I think the answer might depend on that.
Yeah, or what are the country they are coming from?
Yes.
Or, yeah.
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 Google Translate.
We will get into Google Translate and the tools out there in a few slides.
Okay. Sounds like everyone's doing a lot of really good work, so that's good.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this one, just some like best practices, in general, like when translating, accuracy is super important. You want to make sure that everything is accurately translated, not just, per word translations. Cultural sensitivity is huge with most of the type of content that we actually localize for clients, and just understanding the cultural context to avoid misunderstandings, how do you address elders? How do you address men and women and others differently, right? So depending on the language and the culture, you'll have a different answer there. Clarity, keep language simple and straightforward. Our job as a professional translation company is to match the English. So if the English is short and sweet, the translation will be short and sweet. We used to be involved with STC, the Society for Technical Communication, and I always remember like the local chapter leader was saying that clean writing in English, like if you're writing with translation in mind, it's just clean writing and good writing anyways. So that's very helpful. And then, just professional help. When do you need a professional company? Do you need a professional company or interpreter? Or, is there other options or AI that can kind of get the job done? So these are just some best practices, things that we find to be very important. And it was interesting to see the feedback. So I'm looking forward to reading the chat too, Emma. I don't know if that'll be provided.
Yeah, something that's coming up is that in-person interpreters seem to be better received than remote interpreters.
Okay.
And that people have issues with clients not having much to say when the interpreter is remote, but it's much more effective when they're in person.
I can see that in some cultures, like I'm a Spanish descent, so I think like for people that speak Spanish, probably it's more advantage. They open up more. If that person is there, it's like support without being support. I think I can see that with some cultures and having that trust. Is the person is right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give you a quick example. I was recently in LA for a conference, and my Uber driver on the way to the airport, on the way to get home, he kept saying, sorry, English not so good. I'm like, don't be sorry, it's okay. It's no problem. But he actually had like a pocket translator thing, which was really cool. And he would speak, I think, Mandarin into it, and he would translate it into English, and I'd hear the audio of the English. Yeah, don't be sorry. And I was like, don't be sorry, I'm flying out of United. As long as he took me to United Airlines, it was fine. And while it was like, obviously not as good as a professional interpreter, it got the job done for like something simple. And I thought it was really cool to kind of experience that. And yes, I got to the airport, and yes, I said, don't be sorry, thank you very much. So it was cool. It was a really cool experience. I think there's some use cases for when, a self-translation or an AI could be serviceable enough to get it done. Plus, you actually will see what it's saying in English if it's hearing you correctly, and kind of go from there. So
yeah. Well, then Stephanie's pointing out too that online translators can be inaccurate at times, which has caused difficulty in meetings.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just going like what our process is, and I think most professional companies should kind of follow a similar workflow. For us, it's not just translation, it's also revision and proofreading. So there's multiple sets of eyes that look at the translation. If it's, a paragraph in a Word document or a big website, it still follows the same process of what we would call TRP. Just having a proofreader, it's really important to do it right. If there's desktop publishing or engineering or voiceover, if that takes place, and then we would always do like a final QA. We also encourage our clients, if there is like a reviewer or a subject matter expert that speaks the language, we can kind of get them involved either up front or in the review process, because languages are preferential. There's multiple ways to say the same thing. It's all accurate, but it's different flavors depending on the nature of the reviewer. I think there's like at least 15 ways to say popcorn in Spanish. No, I don't speak Spanish, I speak some Italian. So that's just like one little example there. And then kind of finding like a good example of localization. This is a screen capture of Visit Orlando, who's the Convention and Visitor Bureau for the global city of Orlando, Florida. They do these visitor guides, they're called. So they're like, if you walk in the airport, you can pick one of these up, or they're located all over the place and digitally now too. So the content in these guides is actually the same ads, the same, documentation about the rides and all that fun stuff. But they actually picked a different image for the cover based on their research. So their research showed that Chinese speaking folks, prefer to, they not prefer, but in addition to the theme parks, they also like to go to Orlando for like the world-class like shopping malls. So they actually tailored the guide based on the research they received versus the Spanish-speaking market, where it's really about the theme parks and bringing your whole family on the rides and smiling. But again, this is an example of localization. They took the time to, really localize their the document based on, their research. And it's like a simple thing to do. It's just like finding another picture, but yet at the same time, we see very few clients that actually take the time to do something like this. So thought this would be a cool example to show, an example of localization in action and from a real client of ours.
Yeah, yeah. Here is the tools like we were talking. There's tools available to everybody, online translation tools. Probably everybody has know or use Google Translate, DeepL, or AI right now, like ChatGPT or Gemini. And like we were talking and discussing in the chat, I think they can be good just for the guests, or if the information is not important and you just need to communicate quickly with somebody like going to the airport. But we would recommend to avoid it for critical content where it's very sensitive and it needs to be accurate. Then it's when you hire a professional translator, a professional interpreter, or bring in a professional service that it can help you with translation, interpreting, and some examples. They are sensitive and you have to get it right because it's important, and it's for legal, medical, or technical documents where accuracy is critical. So we want to share where AI struggles, like services like Gemini, and that they are free and available to everybody. So we have like 4 buckets: cultural context, consistency, nuance, and bias. And we're gonna go through each of them, and we're gonna try to give some examples of each one. Cultural context is the first one. We can move to the next slide. Yeah, here we are. So we're gonna start with an example. So that is Japanese. I don't speak Japanese, so I can't help. Yeah, you're gonna help either. So that actually is a workplace reading that is very common in Japan when everybody's working together. And if you will put that sentence into the AI, the literal translation is "you must be tired." So actually, it's not. What it means is just, it says, "Thank you for your hard work," or "good job today." So it just means what is the cultural content or how it's used in a daily basis in that culture.
And that could be like offensive to someone, right? Or it's like, it's really not, like, it's comical almost, like, hey, what are you talking about? When like you're really trying to like almost compliment someone.
Yeah, and like another example of cultural context, it's like if you are talking about Lunar New Year, it might be mistaken just for the Chinese New Year, but Lunar New Year actually, yeah, there is a lot of countries that celebrate Lunar New Year, like Vietnam, Korea, China, of course. So being inclusive of all those countries, and just not just talking about the Chinese New Year that everybody is more familiar with. Consistency, and I think a lot of people doesn't know about this one, that it kind of gets tired or doesn't remember what it has translated before. And here's an example in Spanish. Like for example, you are translating a software or a website where the word save is used over and over. And in the beginning, it might be translated correctly, guardar, in the context of saving a file in a software like Microsoft. And then, later on, it doesn't use guardar anymore, the translation. It starts, translating it like salvar, which in this context is totally wrong because it means saving a person. So you are not talking anymore about guardar like in the context of software or in a website or something along those lines. Nuance. So for example, in expressions, here we have an English example, kick the bucket. The AI translation into French is just little, and it means kick the bucket, like kicking a bucket.
Physical bucket.
Yeah, kicking a physical bucket. Donner un copeau de pied dans le soin. And the correct translation should be to die in that context, which is mourir. And the last one is bias, gender bias in translation. So Turkish is a gender neutral language. That means that it doesn't give you any hint if the person is female or male. So the A translation for that original Turkish sentence is talking about a doctor. The AI translation into English will stereotype and translate it as a he. He's a doctor. And the second sentence is the same. Turkish is a gender neutral language. And we are talking about a nurse. And the AI translation and English will assume that it's a female and will give you she is a nurse. So they have to be careful with those stereotypes. And it's mostly because the history, the data that the AI is taking all those translations is biased in the internet. So that is why you get those results.
Yeah, this one.
Yes.
I do the next one.
Yeah, so some tools and strategies to mitigate AI limitations. I think the main one, and you can see in each bucket, cultural context, consistency, nuance, and bias, it's just use a human. So what we call in the industry, the human in the loop. And for cultural context, so we use human translators and reviewers. We use transcreation, is a term in the translation industry, like localization, is you start with the content. So you adapt the English content already to be, to resonate in that foreign language. And some cultural QA checklists to make sure the cultural context is retained in the translation. Consistency, again, human translators and reviewers. We also use translation memories is a repository of the translated content that we have done before for our clients. And we can develop glossaries and style guides to be consistent through multiple translations through the years. With nuance, again, human translators and reviewers. And, we recommend if you use AI just to do context-rich prompts. So you have to be very detailed with your prompts so you get more accurate information instead of being broad and general. And then bias, again, humans to review that the content is no bias. Translators usually they have an eye for that and they are trained for that. And then, inclusive language guidelines to give, try to catch those biases in the data.
I mean, general challenges, how to overcome that. We see different things happen all the time. The misunderstanding due to cultural differences is huge. Many times a client might be like, hey, I need a translation into universal Spanish or universal French or universal Portuguese. Chinese, same thing. Like there is no universal link. Like it depends really on what is, where are these native speakers that you're trying to reach out to? Where are they from? Because depending on the answer, we would use a different team. Canada versus Europe, Latin America versus, Europe, all mainland China versus, other areas. So misunderstandings is huge. Budget constraints is probably the biggest thing that we see. Translation oftentimes happens to be kind of like an afterthought. Like, hey, I built this course, I need to translate it now, no big deal. AI can do it. Well, we just saw some examples of like, do you really want to do that? So these are some things that happen all the time. Some ways to kind of overcome it is obviously you can work with a professional translators, freelancers. There's good companies out there that could offer, a good service for you, hopefully at a reasonable price, depending on what you're looking for. Offer cultural competence training for staff. This is great. We have a couple clients that really do take localization seriously. G and the team there. And they kind of build an inclusive culture. And a lot of that really has to start from the top and trickle down. And we're seeing more of that. I think we're seeing a little bit more of our clients kind of taking translation a little more seriously, building it into their planning, building with translation in mind. So it really isn't like an afterthought. It's kind of built into the whole process. And then again, using volunteers or staff for less critical information. So, if you are in a time crunch and you do have something you got to sift through Google Translate or ChatGPT, have someone review it. So kind of our rule of thumb has been, if you can't have it reviewed by a human in the loop, it might be better to just leave it in English than to translate it poorly. That's just something that, we would like to recommend to our clients is really just get someone involved that speaks the language, and leverage your resources for the different types of content you're looking to translate. It's different to translate an email to understand the gist of what it says than to translate something that, could make a big difference, right or wrong, if it's mistranslated. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the main, challenges that we're seeing and some suggestions on how to overcome them. But it's not one size fits all, what everyone's working on and different scenarios are gonna, require different solutions. So we totally get that. But things with languages are tricky and they can really have a positive impact or they can have a pretty negative impact if it's mistranslated.
And here is the end of our presentation, and we just want to do a quick survey. Again, you can use the chat. If there's one thing you will apply from today's session into your work. And of course, if you have any questions about the session, please share them through the chat and we'll try to answer it as well.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to ask a question directly to our guests, feel free to raise your hand and I can allow you to talk and unmute you too. So feel free to put any questions or thoughts in the chat, but also you can raise your hand and we can answer them speaking as well.
Cool. And I know a lot of times questions pop up, things have to marinate a little bit. So we definitely want to, consider us as a resource to help, add us on LinkedIn or shoot us an email. We would love to just kind of stay in touch and point you in the right direction. Yeah, more in-person translation, interpreting. Yes, take more time learning the culture. These are all great. And I think, this topic is, maybe it was a little bit basic for some of you that have done it before, but we do hope that you've had some nuggets of takeaways from it. And again, we're good on time. We'll stick around, but if you do think of something afterwards, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
These are other translation apps like DeepL.
Yeah.
And also it depends on the language, just like a little You know, some engines like Google might be better in one language. DeepL
Yes.
is definitely is good for Spanish from Spain because DeepL is a European company. So
Yes.
it's also a good resource, but you have to know which language you can use it with, and it's more accurate. But some languages might not be.
There's some languages that there is no AI or machine translation that's good yet, like Haitian Creole. We've done some translations for actually a hotel and casino in Florida, and they want to train their, their workers, and a lot of them are Haitian Creole speakers, and that there is no AI for that. And so then they'll get better. Same thing with French Canada. We're seeing some challenges where it's a machine translation, but the engines were built for French, right?
Yeah.
So the editors are kind of like, it would be easier to just translate from scratch than to translate the output. But no, thank all of you. Like,
Thank you.
gracias, Nancy, we're here. Like
Yeah.
Adrienne, we appreciate the opportunity. And Emma, you and Lisa have been great. So thank you for inviting us too.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, I've got a hand raised, so I'm actually going to allow, Graciela, you can talk now, you just have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay, perfect. No, one of the points that I wanted to bring back is like I remember that a long time ago, anybody could be an interpreter. There was not a clear certification or anything like that. Anybody who was bilingual, would decide, okay, I want to be an interpreter. And I think that's what created the situation that then fostered the ability to just like, you know what, we need to get something a little bit more stronger, a little bit more kind of accurate, and then they started doing more certifications, which is kind of like really, really, it's not easy. It's pretty difficult. So like I used to be an interpreter way back on the days. I don't know if I could do it now, but it's just interesting how time have changed based on the needs of the community.
Yeah, definitely. It's a profession right now.
Yeah.
An interpreter to be a translator, there is certifications out there. I am a project manager and I don't have the skills to be a translator and I speak Spanish and English. If I see that somebody approach me and say, hey, can you translate this quick paragraph? I would say, how critical it is. Because if you want
Sure.
just to communicate with somebody else, just informal, I do it. But if this is information that's going to be published or you're going to share, it's critical, I won't do it because I don't have the skills. It's a skill set.
Very right. Very correct. Like I
Yeah.
said, like many years ago, I could do it, especially in the medical field. And I remember when I started as an interpreter, the only thing I needed to do was to pass a test for like medical terminology because I was doing a lot of the medical interpreting. So I had to do a lot of medical terminology, and that was pretty much all I needed at that time. So, but now, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a skill, and it requires a lot of work. And like I said, it's not that easy anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the remote simultaneous interpreting like platforms like RSI have actually, helped like get a broader reach, for interpreting services too. So, interpreters also now have to be, not only working in pairs, but working in pairs remotely using technology. Whereas before it was like, yeah, in the back of a room in a booth, which still happens. They're there though. They're sharing notes in real life, and interpreters usually work in pairs of two and trade off every like 15, 20 minutes because it's such a vocally demanding profession. But with the RSI, yeah, I bet the RSI technology has kind of added another element. But overall, it's been helpful, I think. Like, we're seeing a lot of interest and the ability to train like people remotely. And clients don't have to like source a Mandarin subject matter expert interpreter. Instructor. They can source an English subject matter instructor and use RSI interpreting into multiple languages, and it facilitates a lot of the back and forth communication. So we're doing a lot of those kind of like virtual classroom based interpretation through RSI. But yeah, no, it's definitely a skill set. It's very, the good interpreters are the trickiest ones to get for your conference. So we know what that's all about, but it's definitely a fun industry to be involved in. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sure.
You know what? I have another question. You have like the interpreting and then the translation. How much? What is the percentage of translation versus interpretation, for example?
In terms of like what we see
Well,
here.
like for example, when you're doing translations of like documents, for example, which is not necessarily you're doing an interpretation person to person or face to face. You're doing it like a documentation, for example. In your company, do you have like a kind of like a percentage of how much translation, like documentation or things like that you do versus the like face to face or remote interpretation?
Yeah, good question. Like I would say like the majority of our work is actually on like the translation side. So translating, putting the courses back together, the documents, kind of like the interpretation of like, hey, I need someone to kind of walk me through this document, like a consumer to not a business to business. It's more consumer. Like I need someone in the courtroom. That's actually like not something we normally do. We're more geared up for like interpreting a webinar like this or an annual meeting for an association or training like I was saying earlier on. So for us, I would say 85% of the time we're doing more of like a project-based work where someone sends us a file, we're translating it, putting it back together and delivering that file. So there's like kind of a start and an end versus someone actually doing interpreting. Yeah, and there's companies out there that just do like legal courtroom interpreting. There's companies that just do medical interpreting. There's like, over the phone interpreting or an app. Like those are kind of like areas that we personally don't get too involved in.
Good. But how difficult, or I don't know if I should put it as difficult, or how easy it is to do, like to get into that type of work, for example. Like like I do like interpreting, but I think that as I got older, I enjoyed doing the translation of documentation much more than just doing the face-to-face interpretation. But I have no idea what is nowadays if you want to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's obviously people go to college and they get trained and they get certified for translation, but I'm not sure like if you go to like a pros.com or an ATA, if everyone has certifications or you get some people that are just translators. Hey, I'm a translator,
Yeah, well, I think 20 years ago when I started, there was not, like we talked, there was not certifications or anything, or even a college to be a translator, to be an interpreter. But right now, I think there is. Like I think in California, Monterey, yes, they do both. They have they train to be a translator, interpreter, even to be a project manager for translations. They have a certification there, a 4-year, degree.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I see Elia has their hand raised. So Elia, I am going to give you the option to talk, and then you'll just have to unmute yourself to speak.
I think you're on mute, Elia.
Sorry, I think that was an accident. But hi, I'm Elia. Thank you for all the great information.
Sure.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
No problem. Great. Well, I think if anyone else has any other questions, we have Nicholas and Maria very graciously provided their emails, so feel free to contact them about any questions that you might have. And I really want to thank them so much for sharing all of this really helpful information that's really relevant to our work and to making sure that we can serve everyone who's in supportive housing and serve them in the best way possible. So thank you so much for joining, and both to the speakers and to the attendees. And thanks for your participation, everyone. Really appreciated all of your thoughtful responses and learning more about how you're using translation and interpretation in your own work.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, Emma.
Great.
All right.
And we'll be posting the recording in the training center. So if you have any colleagues or anyone who signed up who missed it, you can, it'll be posted in the course page, just like you joined for the course, that you can also view the recording. Yeah, hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Bye. See you
Bye.
soon.
Thanks, everyone.